with that said, let us go ahead and have roll call.
Mr. Lee is absent with notice. Ms. Berry? Here. Mr. Carlson?
Here.
Ms. Lesh here. Dr. Carlin?
Here.
Ms. Ryder? Here. And Dr. Burnett?
Here. Moving on to item D, adoption of the agenda. May we have a motion, please?
I motion the agenda for the board meeting of April 18th, 2022 be adopted as written.
Support.
All right, roll call.
Just a second, I'm catching
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. You got it. All right. Ms. Berry?
Here, yes. Sorry.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. And moving on to item E, recognition of visitors. And Ms. Robinson, any visitors to recognize?
I just would like to welcome everyone who is here, parents, students, community members who are here tonight.
All right, very good. Moving on to item F, superintendent and department reports.
Okay.
And we'll go from there.
Thank you. So I do have a couple of comments before we go into the buck appreciation. Two, there's one around restrooms and then another around the prom. So first, I'd like to address the restrooms. So at the high school, and it has come to my attention that there has been some rumors about us moving our restrooms to full unisex restrooms at the high school. So what I've gotten back is that the definition people are thinking is that we're going to remove all of the male and female labels from our restrooms, and people will then be able to go into our restrooms kind of like free-for-all. I do want to state that that is not true. In our high school, we have single-use restrooms, we have communal restrooms, we also have a restroom that is identified as a family restroom. Our communal restrooms are designated for male and female use. Our restroom designations are aligned accordingly with the federal law, which we must follow. Internally, we have had some dialogue about increasing the amount of single-user restrooms that we have in our facilities, but we're just in the early stages of that dialogue. So I wanted to make that comment. If you have any questions or other thoughts around that, please feel free to email me and/or even give me a call. And I'll be very happy to answer any questions. So the other comment I'd just like to, other thing I'd like to address is the idea of the prom. I know people are really concerned about the prom. There's been a lot of chatter last week and then over the weekend about prom. So I just wanted to lay out some of the things that I've been involved with regarding prom over the past week and a half. So just lastly, last Friday, a letter was sent out to our junior and senior families about prom, kind of where the district settled and our position on the venue. This letter was sent after us spending about 10 days investigating it and kind of doing some fact-finding. And in most cases, the superintendent is not involved with the prom whatsoever. Neither is the board involved with the prom. However, there was a risk which someone then brought it to my attention, which then, once I know something, now I'm involved with it, and I do have to address it. And what was brought to my attention was on April 5th. So April 5th, once I got this information, I just started doing some fact-finding, and that included speaking with the owner, township officials, our legal counsel, school leadership, our prom advisor, students, and even some parents. A lot of time and resources were given to try to find the best solution for the problem which we were addressing. And so the bottom line basically is the venue is currently in the process with the township of, from my understanding, of completing its commercial business licensing status. We have been informed this process would not be completed by the April 30th prom date, and therefore the venue would need to change. So once full commercial business approval is received, our district will have no problem operating or working with the business in an official capacity. This information was given to our committee, our prom committee, and with that, they were given other options of which they could have a prom on the date given, which is April 30th. One of those viable options was a local community college, which they were aware that this venue is open. The committee fully understood that having a prom at the original venue could not be a district-sponsored event based on licensing status. The risk involved includes the district and the leadership could be held liable if something drastic were to happen or something catastrophic were to happen. So based off of those, we made the best decision with the information that we do have to, number one, give our students and our committee an option of what they could do instead of this venue. And with that information, they were given some choices and made the decision based off of that. So if you have any further questions for me regarding this, please feel free once again to email me, call me. My number is on the website, probably in the back as well. I have no problem answering questions. So with that being said, we can go ahead and go into the Buck appreciation.
Okay. So Buck staff appreciation.
Yep, so I will, usually I read them first, but I keep messing up that. So I'm going to do the winner first and then read the other staff that were nominated. So with this, our winner for April is Rebecca Day, or is it March? Sorry. April. So April winner is Rebecca Day. So we want to read, Rebecca Day's commitment to Buchanan Community School is deserving of the Buck Staff Appreciation Award and recognition. Her expertise with early elementary special needs children is exceptional. She provides compassionate yet firm instructional and behavioral support for the students assigned to her as an individualized instructional personal care aide. Over the years, she has been assigned to 1 to 2 students per year who may be moderate cognitively impaired students. Students with autism, physically impaired children, severe and inattentive ADHD students, etc. She demonstrates the remarkable ability to engage and support students of any age with a variety of educational and behavioral needs. She meets a child's physical needs by keeping them safe on stairs, during hallway transitions, on the playground, and in the restrooms. She assists an autistic child as she acts and interacts with others to read social cues and to communicate appropriately with peers in a particular situation, and learns. She has monitored children with diabetes and assisted in administering their insulin. While in the school environment, she is consistently alert, attentive, and ready to respond to students' needs at any behavioral crisis to prevent classroom disruption and negative reactions to the student's behavior. She can immediately recognize signs of frustration, anxiety, and anger in order to implement antecedent strategies and teach alternative behaviors that may prevent problem behavior from escalating. Truly a seasoned Buchanan gem. So on behalf of the Board of Education and administration of Buchanan Community Schools, we thank you for your service and encourage you to keep up the great level of achievement and service to our district. Thank you and congratulations. So with that being said, I would like to also announce the several other staff appreciation nominees. Amanda Horton, Buchanan Community School Food Service. Brittany Guthminer, sorry, I'll get it right one of these days. Ottawa Early Childhood Special Education Teacher. Erica Neal, Buchanan High School English Language Arts Teacher. Jessica Leanhouse, Ottawa Moccasin Physical Education Teacher and Interim Kid Care Director. Katie Kaltenbach, Ottawa ECSE Paraprofessional. Christy Schlup, Ottawa Paraprofessional. Nicole Hughes, Buchanan Middle School 5th grade teacher. Phil Place, Director of Technology. And we want to wish everybody a congratulations, even being nominated for the Buck Staff Appreciation. And then, are you going to go down?
Yeah.
Okay. So Miss Day, if you can come forward to receive your award.
There is a step there.
good. And again, congratulations, Rebecca, and all of our nominees. Going on to updates.
So the updates are in your packet. Lots of good information in each of the reports that our building principals and our district department leads have given. I had gotten a chance, just kind of as a parent, to review one of the reports in the high school newsletter, which talks about scheduling. Scheduling has been a pretty big topic since I've been here, and I was able to listen to Mr. Flowers' scheduling parent meeting. So if you haven't had a chance, parents, to listen to that scheduling meeting, there is lots of good information in there for you to help you kind of maneuver through with your child about scheduling. But lots of good information. Read the Reading Month pictures, the middle school events where they were actually able to tape Mr. Franzak to the wall. They raised lots of money. So excellent reports for the month of April.
I just wanted to say for the food service that I was happy to see the continued payment of meals for summer school and for kid care. It is an excellent program. It is very appreciated, and I was happy to see that that could continue for those 2 summer programs.
Very good.
I would just like to say that Mr. Curlin updated us on social studies curriculum at the high school. And as a former high school social studies teacher, that really piqued my interest, and congratulations to those high school teachers who went through that process of 5 different sessions with Rebecca Bush at Ottawa ISD. And it was really good to see that there is an open, open source? Open book. I knew it was a book, but I didn't know the exact term. And so that will be well received throughout the state. So it was an interesting report, Mr. Curlin, and I applaud the social studies department at the high school. I know it's tough to do all of that work. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item G, presentations and close-up trip.
Thank you for having us tonight. The students and myself would just like to thank you guys again for our 40th year doing close-up. As a freshman advisor, I always talk to my freshmen, their first big year as a high schooler, about things that they absolutely have to do. And I always tell them Buchanan offers 2 trips, or as in the past offered 2 trips, one of them being a Spanish trip and another being a trip to Washington, D.C. So this year was, like many of the years I have gone, a wonderful experience. I had the opportunity Saturday at Easter Vigil Mass to run into one of my former students. His name is Mitchell Townstead. I don't know if anybody remembers him, but I just, in chatting with him, got a little bit of an update. He was one of our alumni for Close-Up, and I remember when he came back from Close-Up, he said, "Mr. Wagner, I think I'm going to study law." I saw him Saturday night after Mass, and I asked him how he was doing, and he just finished and graduated with his bachelor's and is going off to law school at the end of the year. He is currently interning for Fred Upton. So this type of a trip really does make an impact for our students, and over those 40 years, Mrs. Ryder and I calculated the number of students that have been impacted by the trip, and it is just a phenomenal number. There are a couple of firsts this year, which were a lot of fun. Out of the 10 students that went, we had 3 first-time flyers, so they got their wings.
Oh, wow.
We also had some navigators, which Google Earth and all of those wonderful technology has changed our lives. But they got us around, and I don't give any directions. I make them take us where we want to go, and they pick their points of interest. One of the highlights of our day together on Thursday, typically in the past we have allowed the students to go off on their own and explore the city. This year, I guess I'm that cool that they wanted to stay with me. So there were 11 of us tramping around the city in pouring down rain. Broke off, some of us went to the archives, some of us went to the ancient Oriental Museum, and then lunchtime came around. Try and find reservations for 11 people in Washington, D.C. around lunchtime. So we had our first reservation maker, the first time he has ever made reservations. He said, Mr. Wagner, what do I do? Not my problem, you figure it out. I said, one pointer though, 11 is a big table, you might have to split us into multiple tables. We all sat together and had a wonderful meal.
Nice.
So I would encourage you to continue to support this program because it does change the lives of our students from a little town called Buchanan. The kids have put together a nice little presentation they would like to show you if you don't mind.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah?
Yes.
Excellent. We're just a small group of people who are willing to come and talk about this today, but more of us went to D.C. I think we can all say, although I don't want to speak for everybody, I can fairly confidently say we had a fairly good time. Can we get started with the slideshow? How do we change slides here?
You have a remote on
I
the
do?
top shelf there. Yep.
Button.
There you go.
Isn't that fun? So let's talk about some of the sites and monuments we saw. We're going to have Michael talk about this stuff.
All right. Oh, all right. I already turned. All right. So we were fortunate enough to see many of the monuments, memorials, and museums while we were up there. We got to see all of these beautiful places. There's lots of marble in that city. It's just kind of amazing. And, you know, I'm used to being here. Most of the buildings are like 2 stories tall, and then they're just towering over you everywhere. We got to see Capitol Hill. We got to see all these Smithsonian's, other places. I believe we have a list of them coming up here. So we got to see the World War II Memorial. I don't think this is in the slideshow. We also got to see the World War I Memorial. That place was huge. As you can see in the photo, the fountain wasn't running when we were there, but I've heard that's very beautiful as well. The Thomas Jefferson Memorial, that was a great place. We saw that on like our first day of the trip. The MLK Memorial, that one, again, was just a very beautiful place. It was right across from the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. There's this huge body of water there. That was great. Did I skip one? Did I skip one? Okay, cool. The Lincoln Memorial, that was right next to the Korean and Vietnam memorials. Those were all very pretty, and they really helped to paint a picture of American history, us through war times and strife with our own people and other nations. It was really powerful getting to see them, especially for me personally, the Vietnam Memorial. And then the Smithsonian's, as it was mentioned, yeah, we did visit the Asian Art Museum, but we also went to the Museum of Natural History. We got to visit the Smithsonian Castle and the American History Museum. They were absolutely beautiful places, so much history on display there. The American history had great displays of all sorts of things, some of which were referenced at other points in the trip, so that was a really great experience. And
We also got to meet many interesting people. In the top right, you can see 2 people in a shopping cart at the Washington Monument. We don't know how it got there, but we raced around. It was really fun. On the left, you can see us with Senator Stabenow. If you look at my face, I have a grin about as wide as a Grinch. You know, some people, they're superstars or rock stars or actors, but, you know, for me, my celebrities are congressmen and women, so that was a nice little touch. And in the bottom right, that's all of us after we heard from a panel of people from the armed forces. So we got to do that a bunch. They had a great program and a great number of things we got to see. And, you know, on this trip, we got to meet a bunch of people from all over the place. I know myself, I was able to be fortunate enough to make a friend group out of people from Massachusetts. Another person here was also in that friend group, but she's not with us today, unfortunately. political efficacy and lawmaking. They were the two main subjects that we studied. Feel free to read all that. The two main topics we focused on while we were there. The people, when we first got there, we were split up into groups called workshops, and they asked us how politically involved we were in our communities. And they had a little chart, and we all took our sticky notes, and we put down where we thought we were. Every single person by the end, I can only speak for my group, but in my group, everybody moved up. Before we had about half the people below the halfway mark. Almost everybody was at the top by the time we left. Diversity, there was, how many states? 7? 7 or 8 different states were there, so we got to meet a bunch of different people. It was a lot of fun. The first day there, I saw some kids picking at snow wondrously, and I said, poor boys have probably never seen snow before. So it was fun to watch people get cold. And speaking of the workshops, what they were is every night we'd get into our groups at the end of the day and discuss pretty much everything we'd learned throughout the day and talk about different topics to just see what we all thought. Here's some highlights. Of course, meeting Senator Stabenow. Unfortunately, we weren't able to meet with Senator Peters or Representative Upton, but they're both very busy people, so we understand. In fact, she came from a committee hearing, talked for about 10 minutes, and then unfortunately had to leave to vote. So we understand senators are quite busy. Using the Metro. That was a fun first experience. Sometimes our cards didn't work. But there were some nice people in a nearby stand who those guards were able to help us get through. And although we didn't put it in there, I'd like to point out the city is very clean. I kept track of how much litter I saw on a day-to-day basis. In the 5 days, I think it only exceeded 10 pieces of litter once.
Wow. That's cool. We good?
One just last little thing. I really should have put it in the slideshow. I didn't think of it until just now. We spent lots of our time at the National Mall. There's kind of just like a cluster of all the Smithsonians and monuments. So we got to spend the majority of our time there. And that was just a gorgeous place. Like he mentioned, it was...
He still needs special education, or no, we can dismiss because of this, this, and this. So typically about a third of the students are getting those 3-year evaluations every year, so that's about 80 students. We have about 12 to 15 students transitioning as preschoolers at the age of 3 from early on. Some get walk-in speech at Ottawa School, some get services in the ECSE classroom, early childhood special education. We also have other meetings to, if students need to move. He's an LD student, but we notice, oh wow, he's really got a lot of emotional depression, anxiety, needs to look at him for a different possible label, or to add services. We notice that the occupational therapy might be helpful with the handwriting, so we've had about 10 of those this year in particular. So the information is gathered. We look at all the academic areas like math and reading and writing. So you're looking at math, problem solving, computation. You're looking at reading, fluency, comprehension, basic reading like sounding out, phonics kinds of skills, comparing what that child did on those particular assessments to other children, his peers. How discrepant is that from what he should be doing? We gather classroom samples and report card grades. We look at their behavior, if it's interfering with learning, social, emotional, or adaptive behavior. Also looking at the antecedents, what's setting that child off in that particular classroom so that we can make a plan that addresses his needs. School history, mobility, attendance, anecdotal observational data from the teachers, medical evaluations the parents might have gotten from a doctor. The medical profession looks at autism, and some of those categories different than the school does, and they have to qualify under the school definitions rather than what the medical profession says, because the medical profession is paid by insurance and those other kinds of things. So We look at sensory integration. A lot of students have trouble with tags, processing foods, those kinds of sensitivities, gross and fine motor skills, et cetera. So when we meet as a READ, when we go over all this information, we have the same team that meets for the IEP with if the child qualifies for special education. So you must have the parent. You have to have the parent permission for giving the assessment, for placing them into special education. We must keep track of how we contact the parent, if it was email, text, phones. That also has to be written into a document. Students, if they're the age of 16, are invited to the IEPs because they have to have a voice in their education and be a self-advocate. General education teachers offer a wealth of information on how that student has been performing in their classroom up to date. The special education teacher needs to be there that possibly may get that student, as she has had so many students that have special needs that she listens for certain things when we meet on a READ. There needs to be a district representative there that can ensure that they can commit resources for whatever is brought up at the meeting. So if a parent asks for thus and so, you can't table the meeting and say, oh, we'll ask the superintendent, sorry. But they have to be able to commit right then, right there. So that's the purpose of the district rep. And then there's a representative that speaks to the evaluation, how the evaluation results that they got or that have been turned in will impact the child's education as they move forward. So at that meeting, we also discuss what kinds of assessments need to happen, who's going to give those, what's their role, are they surveys, observations, are they paper pencil tests? We also ascertain the hearing and vision of a student prior to accepting a referral, just because if they have a hearing or a vision problem, you certainly don't want to say that they're cognitively impaired because something else has affected their education. So based on that comprehensive evaluation within 30 school days, you have all these timelines that you have to meet. We need to provide an IEP if students qualify for special education. So we have to provide FAPE. FAPE is a program that's designed for the unique needs of that particular student. It's provided according to these due process procedures. It must be free. They must be educated with non-disabled students to the maximum extent. They must be educated by certified teachers with regards, and also looking at regards to LRE, which is least restrictive environment. So if you have a student that is really out of control and just now is getting into special education, you can't just send them to a facility like Southside or something like that. You have to go in order so that you gradually tighten up the structure of the classroom until the student gets success. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't students who need self-contained rooms in a separate facility, not in a regular school, but you can't just jump right into that. And then, once you get to the IEP looks at the current performance of the student, the strengths, the weaknesses of the student, and how does that impact their ability to do the general ed curriculum. So if, for example, a student is reading at the second grade level in fourth grade, how that impacts what they're doing in the classroom. Annual goals are written. They're based on the Michigan curriculum, and they're broken down into short-term objectives or benchmarks. As they go through, they'll learn these many words in this much time or whatever the particular goal has to be. In academic areas, social or behavioral areas, they have to be measurable. So if they start here, they had 10 words, and up here they had 12 words. There has to be a way to determine whether they're actually learning. And the curve of learning needs to go up. Then you look at the special education, what kind of programming do they need in a special education classroom, whatever related services they might need, speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, as well as accommodations, modifications, and supports that the student needs in general education and special education. So some of the students, and a couple of years ago I sent some of those out, that if I was a general education teacher, I would be overwhelmed. I've got 7 special education students in my classroom. I've got 8 different accommodations for each of them. Some get the test read to them. Some get the test read if they ask. Some get the test read if the teacher wants it. So there's just a myriad of those kinds of specifics. And they have to detail if they've done those and how they've done them. So there's a way to put that into Power School so that we're accountable for that, as well as the special education teachers. We have to ensure that they have participation with non-disabled students. They have to participate in the state and district testing, MSTEP, as well as the SAT, and most of those tests already have accommodations that they have approved as a corporation. The IEP states when the services will begin, who's giving the services, when they will end, and how much time they will receive for the week or the month on those specific services. The older students that are 16, they go through with the 2 teachers at the high school an Esther J, which is kind of a way to look at, what kinds of getting around the neighborhood skills do they have? Can they use a credit card? Can they, order something at a restaurant? Those kinds of things, as well as have they planned? Do they have a plan for their future college or a job or something like that? That is written into their IEP also. And then lastly, in an IEP, you have to measure their progress. So in Illuminate, you put in their end goal. So if it's 20 words, and right now they're at 0, then it divides it into quarters so that they have to be at a certain mark each quarter in order to be moving up their progression to show that they've benefited from special education. So that's just part of it, and there's also all other kinds of rules for special ed, and so if you ever need to know something, let me know. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
First of all, Mrs. Felgenstein, thank you for taking the time to do that, the depth and breadth of what you have to do, and the special education teaching staff, what they have to keep track of in the documentation, and not to mention what they're actually doing from a pedagogical standpoint is remarkable, for a lack of a better word. So I just had a quick question. So I was kind of looking at the handout we got,
Which is just the procedure, right?
Yeah. So with regard to all of the deadlines and all of the documentation, so kind of a 2-part question. So how is all of the documentation stored and cataloged, and is it all in one central
Yeah, it's
place?
all in Illuminate, which is that database online. And so every kid in Buchanan can have a folder in there, so to
Okay.
speak. It's never activated unless the special ed process, in terms of setting a meeting to determine whether the student should have special ed services or not, then it's activated. So you click on the read part, and then there's things that you fill in there. You click on the IEP, and there's file uploads in there also, where you can put that information that
And
is
so
there.
you and all of the special education staff, as well as administrators, have access to
Right.
that program?
Right.
And then when it comes to meeting these deadlines, which I assume are all set by the state, correct?
Oh, yes.
So when it comes to meeting all of these deadlines, is it just kind of an open audit scenario where the state could come and audit us at any particular time, or do you
Yes.
have to submit these things
No,
to the state on a regular basis?
They can pop right in there and look at everything anytime they want. So when I first started, we had monitoring by the ISD 3 times, every 3 years, and it was just a NCR paper. They came and measured the classrooms and that kind of stuff. And so now we get monitored 3 times a year. And so they can drop in. So we just got a notification from the state. So IEPs must be 100% on time. So we weren't at 100% because we had move-ins that were late on theirs in Michigan, but they weren't late in North Carolina. We had one student that and you're supposed to plan for every emergency. So one student that needed to be assessed before he had his IEP, he had COVID, couldn't get back. What are you going to do? So it was late. So those things do happen, but there are no excuses. There just are no excuses. And if you are over a certain percentage, I don't remember what the percentage is, you have to write a plan of correction. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Felgenstein. All right, moving on to item H, information reports and new business. The first one's going to be Public Relations Committee.
I can provide the update. We met last Thursday, and it was Trish, Kelly, Scott, and I. And our discussion was around a recommendation that Chris Carlson made at our last meeting concerning the recognition of, or special recognition for students that achieve some milestone or teams that achieve some milestone. Right now, we're capturing most of those in the reports from the building administrators, and then it's usually discussed in comments by the board at the end, but formalizing that a little bit more to make sure it's captured in the minutes. And so our recommendation is to change the agenda to include a Points of Pride section that would include the Buck Staff Appreciation, winner, and nominations, as well as any additional special recommendation, or special recognitions there. So our goal is to make that, Scott had all kinds of ideas of how to make that very robust. We're going to start simple and see how we can improve it from there, so.
And it was nice to, I think with the close-up group coming today, first of all, thank you guys for doing that. It was a great presentation, but that's sort of the thing we were talking about in terms of some of the Points of Pride thing, and maybe, you know, eventually getting more appearances similar to tonight for any number of things that Katie just mentioned.
Yep. So we'll move forward with that next month as long as everyone thinks that that's, and Chris made the recommendation, so as long as that kind of meets the recommendation that you had in mind, I think that would be great. We'll try it.
And then in addition to that, a couple meetings back, we, the same committee discussed doing some highlights from each of the buildings. So one of the first ones we did, we'd like to show the video to that. So it is attached and it is off on the screen. Thank you, Phil. So this is from a parent from Moccasin who had some really good results, and she wanted to share it, share some information with our board, and then Scott, within one of our meetings, brought this back up, and we'd like to do this throughout for different buildings as well.
Harris was a new student to us at Moccasin this year, and he came in with a reading deficit.
I didn't really enjoy reading when I first was learning it.
So Buchanan has a nice process where they identify kids and they look at specifically what their needs are, so that way they're not just getting general reading instruction, but they're getting more focused on where the gaps in their skills are.
When I work with children, we'll be looking at very specific needs that they have, right down to whether it's phonemic awareness or phonics, and then in small groups, we have lessons that target those exact skills that they're missing so that we can fill any gaps that they have.
And reading's a little bit easier now, and I learn new things.
We started here in the fall, his fall NWEA test. He was like in the 18th percentile for reading. He just got his winter NWEA test back, and he went up to the 74th percentile for reading.
The home to school connection, the interventions, the literacy coach having supplemented material in place for the classroom, all of that combined has really helped Harris be successful. He is now currently on grade level, and we are also proud of him. He is just one of many students at Moccasin who have made significant gains this year.
I'm very happy that we made the switch to Buchanan.
There's no place I'd rather be. We're very close-knit.
We put it all together, and we know how to be successful, and we know how to make your kids successful. Let's go Bucks!
Let's go Bucks!
Go Bucks!
Let's go Bucks!
So a success story, and we'll have many more of those that are come out. We're going to put those on our website, Facebook page as well, and then we're just hoping to spread the word of what the commitment from our staff, the commitment from our parents in our district, and also our students.
Good, very good. Good job. All right. Facilities Planning Committee.
We met on March 14th, Mrs. Ryder, Mr. Lee, myself, along with Al, Mark Curlin, and Trish. talking about the sinking fund dollars we have. Trish spoke about restrooms, which was part of our discussion that day already, along with a water softener that needs to be repaired at the high school and a entry door problem at Moccasin. We now have a running list that's fairly accurate of all the little projects that need to be done in the district. Those seem to be the most important 3 to target our sinking fund dollars at. And so we're waiting on some bids and things to put that all together. But I think that's heading in the right direction with the list we have now that Al and the building leadership put together. So.
Very good. All right, Board Policy Committee?
I can speak to this. So in our packet, we have the first reading of several policies. Most of these were driven based on Neola required updates to match the wording that needs to be matched. There were a couple that were 2 years ago, I believe, the updates were missed, so we have to go back and correct those. So this is just the first reading of those. There were, you'll see some of the language takes a specific number out of it and it instead puts in the state required minimum or something to that effect so that we don't have to maintain updates and it just follows whatever updates happen to those numbers. So any questions on those policies? I know we're not there, but.
You know, the Policy Committee consists of Katie, Ruth, and myself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Curriculum and Programming Committee?
I'll speak to that. On the 1st of April, Dr. Carlin, Mrs. Robinson, Mr. Curlin, and Mr. Place, and myself, we met. And our first topic of discussion was the curriculum audit review of ELA. And so we reviewed the current ELA, essential standards, curriculum, map, pacing guides, 8 through 12 especially, and review of assessments. We also reviewed materials was discussed and what assessments are being used, NWEA, DIBELS, PSAT, and SAT, and then the future, what will be the cost, and so it was a very in-depth look at ELA. The second thing that we did was get the first view of the new district website, which is now up and running. And the last thing that we discussed was how to deal with attrition of staff in the future. Are there any questions? Did I miss anything, Scott? Okay, very good.
Very good. Farm Advisory Committee?
Is this me? Right, okay, I'm just making sure. We've been busy with Plow Day. We have a lot of meetings that have been working towards getting this Saturday around and ready. We have 3, it's our 50th, so we are doing something for our 50th, and then we have a memorial tree planting for Mr. Ray Weinberg, and then we have another special notice for our Sugar Shack. Got to come and see who that's for. And then we are trying really hard to keep better records. That's why we appreciate Melissa so much, because she's taking notes while we're going to our meetings. But just share, like we opened a shared drive on Google so that we can all add to the materials of the school farm. The Weinbergs did donate some really cool historical materials that we have to get put in there, and that's going to go after the Plow Day. And then just, again, trying to keep track and know what we did and keep numbers, and that way that it will make it easier year after year continuing the school farm.
Very good. All right. Moving on to item I, public comment, and I'll read for Buchanan Community Schools bylaw 0167.3, which governs public comment at board meetings. Each participant may speak once during the meeting for up to 3 minutes. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. The board will listen, take comments and questions under advisement, and not respond at this time. I, as president, will refer questions to the superintendent for research and response in a timely manner. Please ensure your public comment card includes your contact information as desired for a response. And if you have specific questions for the board that require follow-up, please email those directly to the board president. And with that said, I have one comment card, and April Benz.
Hi.
Hi.
This is my very first meeting ever. I am not from Buchanan, so I would like to introduce myself. And my name is April Benz, and I am the owner of Serenity Woods Summit, where prom was supposed to be held. I'm not quite sure why it's still not being held there. It was my understanding, as Ms. Robinson explained, that I presented all of the material to the school, to which you presented to the lawyers. They reviewed, and a decision was reached that it was okay to have prom at my location. I had students come picking out decorations. I had parents excited, and in a matter of 1 week, something changed, and I'm just not sure what that something is. I will tell you from day one, I have been 100% upfront with Buchanan Township in regards to this wedding venue. I came into this town. I didn't just buy a piece of property and say I want to build a house and a barn. I bought a piece of property and I went to them and said, here's what I want to do. Can I have your support? And they stood behind me every planning commission meeting for 6 meetings in a row until one building inspector decided that he had a personal malicious vendetta against me. One person. And now my name is complete mud in this community. It is, and that doesn't even bother me. It is the kids. It is their prom. It is the fact that they can't even have the trinkets or the party favors that were ordered through the school to give out to their friends, even if they do have the unsanctioned prom, which I absolutely will allow to happen, regardless of the consequences on my end, because I came here to support this school. I'm a mom, I'm a parent, just like probably all of you. I'm actually a mom of a teacher. Like, I am all for schools. I'm a registered nurse. I am all for safety. My building is safe. I encourage every one of you to please come tour it. Like, call me, come take a tour. Like, it is 100% safe for these kids to have the prom that they wanted and that they deserve. And I just don't know what happened in the matter of a week where a decision was made and then instantly a decision was changed, because that decision was never communicated to me. So, not that it has to be answered today, and I understand I only have 3 minutes, but I hope somebody can communicate that to me directly, what that decision was, why it was made, why we are disrupting their prom. I feel like I had a million things to say, and now I don't know what the rest of those were. But I do feel like I have the support of the parents, and I actually feel like I have the support of the school, the principal, the teachers, superintendent. I just am not sure what happened in a matter of one phone call to the Board of Education, who typically does not get involved in dances. I'm not sure. So I guess I just came hoping that I would get an explanation for the students.
And thank you, April. And what I'll do is have you talk to Mrs. Robinson to make sure that's cleared or understand. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item J, adoption of consent agenda items. May we have a motion?
I move the Buchanan Board of Education approve the consent agenda for the regular meeting of April 18th, 2022 be adopted as written. It includes minutes from March 9th, 2022 work session retreat, March 14th, 2022 regular meeting. It also includes the warrants, which involves treasury and expenditure reports for March of 2022, a recommendation to hire as submitted by Buchanan Community School Director of Operations, Mr. Al Burgett, and that is Heather Farmer for Operation Utility Staff. Also, there is a coaching recommendation for the spring of 2021-22 submitted by Athletic Coordinator Mr. Mark Fry, and that's Madison Bailey, who's a JV girls tennis coach. And then finally, the resignation of Megan Watkins, Buchanan High School science teacher.
Support.
Anything else to add? Okay. Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K1, BBA Graduation Certification. May we have a motion, please?
I motion that upon satisfactory completion of district requirements for high school graduation, the Board of Education hereby approves Buchanan Virtual Academy student Devon Renbarger and Buchanan Step Up student Kyla Rogers.
Support.
All right. And anything to add, Ms. Robinson?
Just congratulations to both of them for their work.
Congratulations. And roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K2, BBA 2022-2023 School Calendar Amendment.
I'll make the motion that the Board of Education approves the amended Buchanan Virtual Academy 2022 and 2023 school calendar recommended by Buchanan Virtual Academy Director Mark Fry and Superintendent Robinson.
Support.
All right. Yeah, this is just needed, correct? Okay. Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K3, Buchanan Community School Employment Approval. May we have a motion, please?
I motion the Buchanan Board of Education approves the employment of employee 1115957.
Support.
All right. Ms. Robinson?
Yes, we've been included information just regarding my meeting with the employees, so you have that in your packet. And so I would just recommend that she's approved.
Any questions? All right, roll call.
Well, real quick, do we in the material, is that going to go out? Do we just need to mark it all the number instead of a he or a she or a they?
Yes.
Okay, we need to correct that then.
Okay.
Okay. Just your recommendation letter needs to just have the number added instead of a description. That was all my only thing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K4, 2022 Cheer Camp Overnight Trip.
I'll make the motion that the Buchanan Board of Education approve the 3-day cheer camp hosted at Michigan State University in East Lansing. The participating students are expected to depart on July 31st, 2022 and return on August 2nd in accordance with Board Policy 2340. And the cheer camp trip will be under the supervision of cheer coach Nikki Coquillard.
Support.
All right, Ms. Robinson?
And this is just a process that we go through for each overnight trip. Looks like the students will, go through a number of events at this cheer camp, and I know they're excited about the possibility of going.
All right. Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K5, Emergency Operations Plan Amendment. May we have a motion, please?
A motion the Buchanan Board of Education approves the amended Buchanan Community Schools Emergency Operations Plan as recommended by the Emergency Security Planning Committee.
Support.
All right. Ms. Robinson?
And just based off of some feedback we received from our Sheriff's Department and the people who are over the plan, we did have to make some corrections, a number of corrections. And after the corrections were made, that information was then sent back to them with approval. So,
All right. Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K6, Update Authorized Banking Users.
A motion the Buchanan Community Schools Board of Education approves the following individual to be an authorized user on Buchanan Community Schools payroll accounts. Laura Morris.
All right. Ms. Robinson?
Oh, yes.
Support.
Thanks.
and as you guys know, we are in the process of moving some of our accounts over to another banking entity, and so Mrs. Morrison needs to be added to that particular account.
All right. Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Abstain based on my employment.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K7. Right. And it's going to be School of Choice.
I move the Buchanan Board of Education, Buchanan Schools, exercising the option permitted by Section 105 of the State School Aid Act of 1979, as amended by the Public Act 300 of 1996, will accept applications of non-resident students who reside within Berrien-RISA boundaries for the available grade level openings as listed below for enrollment into Buchanan Community Schools for the 2022-23 school year, and will operate a school of choice program in our district in compliance with the state requirements of Section 105. The window for the application for these openings will be from May 16th, 2022 to June 13th, 2022. Available openings for each grade level are as follows: kindergarten, 25. First grade, 7. Both of those are at Ottawa. At Moccasin, second grade will be 5, third grade 5, fourth grade 8. At Buchanan Middle School, fifth grade 7, sixth grade 5, seventh grade 4. At Buchanan High School, eighth grade 12 students, ninth grade 5 students, 10th grade 4, 11th grade 1, and 12th grade 0.
Support.
Thank you, Chris.
And Mrs. Robinson?
This is just a procedure that we go through each year, and I know we've communicated with each of the building principals to get these numbers, so basing what they know are already included, leaving some spots open for additional district students. These are the numbers that they were able to come up with.
Okay. And roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K8, RFP for Buchanan High School Network Infrastructure Upgrade Project.
I make a motion the Buchanan Board of Education approves Director of Technology Phil Place's recommendation to accept the bid from Haas Systems for the Buchanan High School Network Infrastructure Upgrade Project.
Support.
And Ms. Robinson?
And this is just the upgrade of that network system. And I know Phil worked really hard on getting this RFP up, and in a timely manner as well. So, yes, I do support it.
All right. Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Abstain based on my employment.
Okay. Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K9, Neola first reading.
I move the Buchanan Board of Education approves the first reading of the following Neola revised policies. Policy 0167.3, public comment at board meetings. Policy 2410, prohibition of referral or assistance. Policy 2414, reproductive health and family planning. Policy 2418, sex education. Policy 5511, dress and grooming. Policy 6110, grant funds. Policy 6114, cost principles, spending federal funds. Policy 6325, procurement, federal funds, federal grants and funds. Policy 7440, facility security. Policy 8600, transportation. And finally, 9190, shop project charge.
Support.
And we just talked about those. Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K10, BEA letter of agreement, COVID-19 leave.
I make a motion the Buchanan Community School Board of Education approves the attached letter of agreement with the Buchanan Education Association regarding COVID-19 leave effective October 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022.
Support.
Okay. Ms. Robinson?
Just in working with our BEA union presidents and just seeing a need there, the request came up about this. We were able to kind of delve into some of our just data to see what we could do, and we came up with this agreement. And they do support the agreement that we were able to come up with.
Okay. All right. Questions? Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Abstain based on my relationships.
Mr. Carlson?
Abstain based on my wife's employment.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. I guess we have enough. Okay. Good.
We do have enough.
All right. Very good. Item 11, proposed tree planting at Ottawa Elementary School.
I motion the Buchanan Board of Education approves Buchanan Tree Friends to plant up to 20 trees at Ottawa Elementary School. Exact planting sites to be determined.
Support.
All right. Ms. Robinson?
And just so you know, Mrs. Dennison is working with Mr. Martin around where to plant the trees. So there's up to 20 trees. So they are working very closely on getting these trees planted, really for Arbor Day, which is coming up here soon.
Nice.
Yep.
And roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item K12, an RFP for the architect build design. Roll call.
I motion the Buchanan Board of Education selects Performance Services to move forward with negotiating the final project scope and price for the ESSER Fund project.
Support.
All right. Ms. Robinson?
And this is a project that is outlined in that will be funded by our ESSER dollars, and also outlined in the documents that you have in front of you. And we have spoken about this before, addressing some of the issues with the systems at Ottawa, and then also adding some coil to the middle school to provide air conditioning. So,
Very good. Roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item L, question or comment from board members?
I just have one. I want to thank Mr. Wagner and the students that are here for the close-up trip presentation. I think it's great that we're able to go out for a week and experience something outside of Buchanan and Barron County, and we had some first flyers, which is great that we're able to provide that experience for the students. And I really enjoyed the presentation that you guys put together, kind of recapping everything that you were able to see out there. So thank you very much.
I would like to echo that. It's always good to see students learning above and beyond the classroom, and there's just no better way to learn about government than being in the city where so much of this happens. And it's always difficult to make a decision after an event such as COVID. I know we went in 2001 after 9/11, and that was very difficult. And the next year was equally difficult for a different reason, but I applaud you for earning the money, making the effort, and being well-rounded students beyond the classroom. I have one other thing. Save the date. June 11th, this building will be 100 years old, and we are going to be celebrating. So we've got lots of activities, speakers, a tour for any past students who've been here. So it'll be an exciting day.
See y'all at Plow Day.
Yeah. Right, and hopefully by the time we have our next board meeting, we should maybe, with knock on wood, have our Dba graduation in person with parents, so hopefully that will work.
I would just like to add one more thing, too. It was nice not only to have the close-up group here, which is a very positive thing to experience, but that coupled with our first spotlight video, Charles, the videographer, and all of the individuals at Moccasin that were involved in putting that story together, just, as a short clip there, I thought it was really well done. More importantly, the actual story behind, the actual events of, even though it was one student, I think there's a lot of examples of things that are taking place in our schools that we don't always get to see and talk about, especially in formal board meetings. And so, at least for those 2 minutes, it was really nice to, to have that positive reinforcement that, hey, there's a lot of good things that happen in our walls in this community as well. So, well done.
I would like to add, it's always interesting to see former students who are now teachers and part of our community in such a variety of ways. So we've done a lot of great things in these walls for 100 years.
Yep.
All right, with that said, our next board meeting is going to be Monday, May 16th at 7 o'clock. So it's a different timing, and that's going to be due to the end-of-year reception. And so we'll be meeting right after that. So that, we're adjourned.